Clubhouse.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Beacon 23 recap. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Boat Rocker. They're the masterminds behind both Beacon 23 and the legendary Orphan Black series.
Oh, nice. Can you tell us what that's about? I haven't heard of the Orphan Black series yet.
Well, I can do that. It's actually this intense show about an outsider orphan girl named Sarah, who is used to essentially being a fly on the wall until she sees her doppelganger commit suicide. So, since this other girl looks just like her, Sarah decides to take over that stranger's identity, and things do not go as planned. And she ends up tangled in a whole web of mystery, and it's a pretty gripping show. So, expect to see plenty of conspiracy and deceit in this one.
Ooh, I like that. I can't wait to watch it.
Don't forget to relive the gripping suspense of Orphan Black. Watch all 5 seasons on AMC Plus and BBC America today. Go now, quickly! Today's Beacon 23 interview is brought to you by Boat Rocker, producers of Beacon 23 and the iconic Orphan Black series. Today, we have the absolute pleasure of talking with composer William Marriott, or Will to his close friends like Gabby and me. How are you doing today, Will?
Great. Pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for making the time to be with us today. When the opportunity came up to kind of pick and choose who we wanted to talk to, we definitely wanted to talk to you, the music having to do with the show.
I appreciate you guys. It's very kind, as always. You know, we try to stay humble here and just do our thing for the project.
Well, let's get started at the beginning. How did you get started, even with scoring for TV and film? Did you go to school for that? Did you play a band instrument in high school? Where did you start?
Yeah, it's a good question. I fell in love with music through saxophone. I played piano a little bit growing up. I wasn't too serious about it, but I picked up the saxophone in 4th grade and I sort of fell in love with it. And I went to school for jazz saxophone over in University of Michigan. I've dabbled in some composing in high school, some teachers in high school were pretty influential for being supportive of the creativity. We did a good music program. Small, but it was strong. And so then I just decided to go full into jazz. And then when I went to Michigan, I studied jazz in what is called contemplative studies, which is a great program, but it's a lot of focus on psychology, philosophy, meditation, and of course, jazz studies. And then from there, after I graduated, I did I still dabbled in composing my own things and music, and then I kind of realized I didn't want to, not that I didn't want to, I just knew that life in jazz saxophone is difficult, and I wanted to find a way to find a passion in music and something that I could do when I'm 50, 60, 70 years old and still be challenged by and happy by. And not that jazz wasn't that, but I just foresee the music world shrinking a little bit, and I figured that film music was a great way for me to explore that pathway of a career. I found a way into doing an internship at Hans Zimmer Studio in 2012. And then from there, I met Ramin, and this was in October of 2012, and we really hit it off. And then by December, I started working for him. And I just, have been with Ramin in all capacities since then.
We have another saxophonist on the line here.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, did you start on the alto or the soprano?
I did for a year, and then I moved to tenor when I was a little too small.
Yeah.
I struggled through it. What about you?
You did? You struggled? You struggled because of the breath, or because
only
of the
for
finger?
Yeah, exactly. As a 13-year-old, you're just learning to grow into that instrument. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I played the sax, tenor, and a little bit of the bass.
Amazing. So, we're a rare breed, you and me.
What? Yeah, I don't know. That's really exciting. And honestly, I do meet plenty of saxophone players, though. And actually, they're usually Pisces. When were you born? Are you a Pisces?
Oh, so funny. No, I'm a September baby, so, I'm Virgo here.
Yay! Okay, wait, when? When is your birthday?
Oh, the 14th.
I was going to see if I was lucky and you were like my half birthday, but almost.
When is that? Just
You
so
would have
I
been
know.
so lucky.
Best
Anyway.
podcast ever. Yeah.
Anyway, that's really cool. I don't know. I think it's pretty special that we are getting to talk to you because I feel at least that you're the soul of the production. I think music makes everything. I appreciate your contribution to everything that you do, actually, but especially in Beacon 23.
Oh, that's very sweet.
It's honest. And I feel like the vibe I get is eerie and mechanical. What is like your inspiration when you are preparing to like create a score for Beacon?
I think the difference between being a pure musician and a composer is that, like you said, we are storytellers first and foremost. And I think that is what you have to treat the music as. Of it's not about ego. It's not about putting your music in the forefront. It's about supporting the rest of the team and the rest of the project. It's about supporting the actors and your characters and the way the story is driven. So that is one of the main things that Ramin and I strive for in general, and is to write good storytelling music, because that I think is indicative of like sophisticated writing too, and mature writing. So to match the tone of Beacon, it's such an interesting story because there's so many different elements that are happening. And what initially that I wanted to comprehend was achieving that duality of space, where in the human nature that we are in awe of space and there's so much beauty in space, but in fact how lonely and dark and life-sucking that vacuum can be when you're actually in space alone. And that I think is the core of what Beacon is the loneliness that you feel in space, and you have these moments of connection where you find beauty within the situation you're put in. To achieve that musically, I wanted to find a way to make it extremely haunting, yet have moments that make you passion, feel romance in a way that take you into a different stratosphere. And thankfully, Glenn and James and Joy and everybody at Boat Rocker really wanted to encourage doing space music that's not the rigid, like the normal tropes of space music. And that allowed me to kind of go crazy with what I can do creatively with this show, and they were supportive all the way through. So that was my initial comprehension of what I wanted to achieve with Beacon.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you think of space music, what influences were you thinking there that you wanted to recognize but not copy?
There's so many masters of space music already. Between 2001: Space Odyssey, you have this amazing orchestral writing, obviously, from all the suites, and your solo French horn obviously is a big trope that, or brass or general, just things that have been done that I don't, the things that have been done that you don't necessarily want to compete.
Beacon.
Correct. Yeah, there's only a few moments where I actually put in brass just to give it a little bit more gravitas, but it's not. I don't use brass heavily. And then obviously the other way is Hans in Interstellar. I think he did an amazing job with that movie. I'm a big video game fan too. I love video games. So there's games like Mass Effect, that have established a sense of sci-fi that I don't want to also go down, which is arpeggiating electronics, or there's things that have been done that I wanted to create a new universe for, and I think that I was able to achieve that. I'm very proud of the score myself, and it's something that worked hard on to try to get right. So I hope that translates in a way that fans are enjoying it. That's always my hope.
Do you think that your jazz background helped you, and in what way? Like, do you think it helped you with this genre?
Interesting. Yeah, Ramin and I are both jazz musicians, and I think that's influenced the way that I've been able to write with him and been able to create my craft. Is that I think jazz takes the fundamentals of classical music or pop music, let's say, and it smushes it into a form that is, I don't know what to say, digestible, I want to say, but there's a certain freedom that happens when you're improvising that I think is sort of translates really well to film composition, which is you need to express a certain emotion and how do you do that with your instrument? How do you get a dirty sound that it expresses anger or anguish or passion? Like, how do you do that with your instrument? So this translates similarly. How do you do that with like a synthesizer or a violin or orchestra? It's taking the same kind of concepts and using them in like a broader spectrum. And jazz, is so vast these days too. I mean, one of my favorite composers, and I think one of the greatest composers, is Wayne Shorter of this, and he's written between bebop in in the 60s, and then between the stuff he did later in his career was completely different. It was avant-garde or textural based, I want to say. So I just think jazz creates like a freedom that allows you to explore all sonic opportunities in a way that is nurturing. That's kind of my experience with jazz. And plus, jazz, I always think about whiplash. Like, jazz can be brutal, and I think you have to have a lot of musical toughness in your skin, between all the notes that can happen in a certain project or whatever. The being is any business is that you kind of need to have a thick skin, and you can't be offended by if somebody doesn't like your music. You just have to do what you think is right and what you think is musical and artistic, and then move on and obviously address any wants by the team, but you can't be attached to your music in a emotional way that's going to be to your detriment. It's only going to hurt you.
That sounds like it could be haunting with moments that feel romance.
Yeah,
So this is right up your alley, it sounds like you were made for this kind of expression.
Yeah, no, I mean, they really allowed me to go the deep end on this project. And, I could also kind of get into more detail of what I did there.
Well, before we do that, though, let's look back through your credits a little bit and describe how we got to Beacon. There's about 10 years worth of stuff called, it looks like it's probably mostly all the same job, but they all have different names: score advisor, score coordinator, additional music, et cetera, et cetera. So can you describe maybe what those roles are and how they kind of prepared you for where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. The greatest thing about starting out from the bottom is that you just learn everything from the bottom, right? So making coffee and as an intern and cleaning tables, then becoming a technical score advisor. So there's a belief that you could be the greatest composer in the world, but if you don't know how to do the simplest things within your computer system, it doesn't really matter, right? It's like you need to have a comprehensive knowledge of everything going on in your business and the systems that you're working with. So technical score advisor, it was really just being a dual of Ramin's assistant and handling all the tech on his side. So for a handful of years, you would be, spending time after he's done running a piece of music at night, printing all his music or preparing orchestra sessions or making charts or handling sound design for certain characters or certain things that are happening. There could be source music. It could just be any number of random jobs that are happening. And then as you settle into that job, Ramin always knows that, I'm here to be a composer. So he starts to foster like the writing part and starts to give you writing opportunities and additional music. So then you could start getting your chops up on TV shows and cues here and there, or conform to Ramin. So it could just be any number of little or big responsibilities, and depending how you do there, you're obviously going to get more or less if you can handle it or not handle it. So just as the years go on with Ramin, it just transforms into being his assistant, his tech assistant, doing writing, doing both at the same time, and then moving fully into writing and just supporting him musically and to do, whatever really it needs to be done. It's the real collaborative part that has been special together over the years of making mistakes and him building my toolkit up and teaching me different foundations or different techniques, and creatively collaborating together has been pretty amazing over the past decade or so. And it just you just sort of grow as time goes on, and it's hard to think about myself as a 23-year-old starting with Ramin and then now 34 And just thinking about the years we've had together, it's been pretty fun, but a lot of tears of pain at the same time in a good way. That's what I ask for. I want to get my ass kicked, and it's all for the benefit of becoming a better composer. But it's been a process. It's been for sure a dream come true, and him supporting me now and getting to Beacon has been huge, right? Of him feeling like he cares, he does, and he wants to foster my career, and we talk about that, and he wants to be there for me, and he believes in my ability and in my want and my hunger to keep writing music and keep doing projects. And I feel that from him too. Like, he's always constantly inspiring me personally, and I feel like every time I take one step forward, he's taking one step forward. So it's like chasing the white rabbit in a way, but it's been I couldn't ask for a better experience, honestly. It's been sacrifice, but also in a way that I've wanted. Anyway, I digress. I'm rambling, but that
great.
in a nutshell is sort of the years with Ramin. That's how we've gotten to Beacon. He knows that, this project conveniently came up, and the people at Boat Rocker and MGM wanted to make this happen. So I appreciate everybody for giving me a chance. That's huge for me. I don't take that lightly. I know how much this business is run on trust and how hard it is to even get your foot in the door. I wanted to do the best I could for this TV show.
How did you meet Ramin?
Through remote control. I was just, we always called him the Phantom because he's a very hard person to catch. He's a he works very hard, and, he's a quiet guy in private. Yeah. So it's like, I'd be cleaning the kitchen. He'd walk out. I'd just say hi in passing. And then just from there, just kind of,
just good
just
vibes.
Being around. Yeah, just being around, honestly. That's kind of, it's a weird luck of a draw in a way of, you just, a lot, you spend 12 plus hours with somebody, you just have to be able to get along.
That's amazing. What a dream come true. I mean, you were able to be, a jazz musician. Now you're, really creating a legacy that is going to really last forever. Like, that's incredibly impressive at 34. So thinking back at, that 5-year-old self, like, what would you say to yourself right now?
I'd be very happy. Yeah, I have no idea what I would think. Maybe I wanted to be an NBA player when I was 5 or something like that. But
you don't remember what?
But couldn't imagine myself here at this time. Yeah, I'm very proud, I guess, of the work I've put in over the years, and I try not to look at the stuff. I just want to keep moving forward and keep making music. That's just what's important to me. I just want to keep contributing to the music world in a way that's creative and new. That's just what I want.
Yeah. Okay. So just really quick, though, that clarinet piece in Beacon 23, did you write that? Did you play that?
Oh, the one with Iris?
Iris. Mm-hmm.
So actually, I believe that the actress plays clarinet, and she did that herself, is what I remember happening. In that episode specifically, I tried to incorporate a little bit of clarinet in her textures, like around her meditating and just in her character. Some woodwind flair is in there to try to match.
I had a sense that maybe she was a woodwind player because she pulls out that reed and starts sucking on it for a second before she starts playing in a way that didn't seem actory. It seemed real.
Yeah. I mean, if she's the character, why mess with it, right? It's like she did a great job, and I couldn't beat that. Just let her play.
A while back, some partners of mine on our same podcast network got a chance to talk to the Gregson Williams brothers for their contributions to the Gilded Age.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't participate in that podcast except as an editor, so I got to listen to it. They had mentioned that so much of scoring these days is turned more into atmospheric kind of sounds rather than like a strong melodic theme. Do you have any thoughts on what you prefer to do or anything like that?
Yeah, I think theme is key. There's a certain type of combination that is a sweet spot there. And obviously every project is different and you can never really know. But at least in our school of training, we always want to work with some kind of theme. or a motif or something that will hook you on to a certain character or make you believe in this character or where you are in a place and time, right? And I think there needs to be callbacks. And sure, you can achieve that with textures. And I think there are times where a lot of the times it is like that. And especially in Beacon, there are times where there are more textural moments. But that being said, I do strongly still believe in melody and theme and in progressing the story through those mediums, I should say. And I guess you could achieve that in a number of ways, but you have to be really smart of what studios look for these days too, right? And I think if you get a project where you can do textures and if that's what they want, and that's what they want, but it's a very fickle business. And as a young composer, you make a wrong move and that can be a career killer for you. I always find it very important to establish yourself as somebody who can write with melody and who can write with harmony and who can have every tool at their disposal, right? Not that I'm trying to showcase that, but I just think that it's important that I believe that's what studios also look for. That's why they hire Ramin. That's why they hire me, is that's because they want somebody that can work with orchestra and that knows how to manage a project well and can deliver what they're asking for. And I think if you provide something that sounds more niche, I want to say, or more specialized, then that just makes your value greater, I could say, as a composer. And, I think there are a million people out there who can create such cool textures and moments and things that I can't beat myself, right? And especially with all the music that's available today and AI that's coming, and we've seen it now. And, more and more storytelling and melody and themes are going to be more important in the future.
I do think you can tell a difference.
I mean, their concern was that the demand was more for that textural stuff, and they prefer writing strong themes, but they weren't getting asked to a lot, which was why they liked the Gilded Age gig, was because that is a really identifiable kind of sound to it.
Yeah, and I think whatever the producers in the studios want, honestly, that's what your goal is as a composer, is doing your art within the confines of what they're asking for. So that's the challenge in the job, and that's what makes it fun at the same time.
When I think back to like Ramin's compositions in your earlier part of your career, I'm looking at like Pacific Rim. Like that's a thing that really stands out, and like you can like hum along to it. It's got like electric guitar, but with an orchestra. It's a really badass.
Yeah, it is timeless in a way.
Sounds like a woodwind brain to me.
Yeah, that was a really fun one.
Do you have any favorite compositions that you've created?
Ooh, I really love certain moments in Beacon. There are certain scenes, there are certain episodes that I'm really proud of, and certain moments that I think hit that sweet spot of where I feel like it's different enough and it's cool and it's weird and I could talk about the harmony episode, right, with her and cool. So that was one of my favorite episodes just because the look is so different than the rest of the show, and it's very well done, and the concept is, I love computers and AI and just sci-fi in general. I'm a big sci-fi Isaac Asimov fan, so there's being in a dual world like that was really interesting to me, and how Halen was trying to connect with harmony the whole episode as the Beacon was falling apart. That was one of my favorite episodes, and I used a lot of analog electronic gear on this show in general. I think about 60-70% of the sounds in there are run through some kind of processor or my synthesizers or my pedal board here. So what I would do with harmony specifically is I would take very human elements like orchestra and run them through a pedal board or reverb or certain filters, outboard gear. So you would get a synthesized, interesting halfway between human and non-human elements. And obviously I wanted to create a icy digital world that she lived in while still giving her an interesting theme, right? And the way that develops throughout the episode, I think this is kind of fun. But at the end, I really love some of the action there with her fighting off the therapist. Really fun. Yeah. And, how can we not all feel that at some point, right? And
you have to tell us about those stories.
Exactly. bring that up with my therapist. But then my favorite cues is the end with Halen bringing her back to life via Bart.
I just love when you talk about Bart. Bart's my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, Bart's a fan favorite because everybody loves that character. You feel for him or it, you know. So I used like a detuned synthesizer patch, and then slowly as Halen's walking down, and then he's looking out and he sees the artifact outside, the real orchestra starts to bubble in, and I really am interested in I love arias and Elgar and big sweeping moments like that where I could just kind of go off. So it's like it's a revival moment, so there has to be a sort of holiness to the music there, but mixed in with the detuned synthesizer, you get this really interesting beauty yet feels wrong. Everything's falling apart and it's flat. And then as he's sitting there and the orchestra's growing and growing and growing, you're just getting more organic elements to feel like, oh, this is exciting and bubbling. And then it's obviously the end is the reveal of coming back to life. And you're feeling like, oh, this is holy at this moment. This is larger than. That was definitely one of my favorite moments.
You know, what you were describing about your familiarity with the technology and the synthesizers and all that just made me think of this complete non sequitur that only you will find the least bit interesting. My parents-in-law, when they were young, they lived in Ithaca, New York. And because my father-in-law went to Cornell. And
I've been there.
They lived down the street from Robert Moog while he was developing his early synthesizers.
That's amazing. That's incredible.
Yeah, pretty neat, right?
I know how small Ithaca is. There are not many people who can say they've been there like that.
And they are not interested at all in synthesizers. but they knew that one tiny bit of trivia about some place that they had lived. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, they heard it through the neighbor's house too often.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's too funny.
You mentioned how at some point that you realized that your dreams were coming true, or this was a dream come true sort of gig. Do you know maybe like when in your career you had that moment of like, wow, I'm living in my dream and now I need to make a new dream?
There's always a handful of times, like this job, being a musician is just hard in general. I think we all understand that arts in America is tough to make it in, right? And I think you can take little wins along the way, right? And there's big moments that have a big, strong personal effect on you that you really hold on to and that I think keep you going, right? And I think, you mentioned Pacific Rim, and that's one of the few winning moments, just sitting at the screening and watching, all your hard work being put in fruition, and you're having a great time watching this movie, and you feel this sense of awe of like, wow, this is cool. You're 23, 24, like this is badass. I get to work on this stuff, and this is a dream. Even before I started working for me, and I always looked at this project. Like I remember when Pacific Rim was teased, and I was like, oh, this would be so cool to work on, and it worked out. And and then throughout the years, there's other little wins. Like it could be as simple as getting some positive reinforcement from Ramin, you being like, hey, Will, like you're doing a good job, or this is a really good piece of music, whatever it is, or feeling like you're progressing. I remember there was one night I'd been working really hard, and I wasn't writing much music at the time. This was still early, and I just sat down at the computer and started writing. And I remember creating a piece of music in a few hours that was fine at the time, but that was a new development for me at the time. Like, that the fact that I can do that, and that I was growing, and that by listening to Ramin's music all the time, I was able to work faster and being around it and yada, yada. Like my brain was starting to develop, and I feel like I was catching on. And then as you go on, like feeling ownership over projects and proud of the music you do for the shows or the movies that you work on, and feeling challenged. I think feeling challenged and always never phoning this job in, I think that's the real benefit of composing, is that like you want to invest your soul into what you're working on, and making sure that it doesn't matter what it is. It could be the strain, it could be person of interest, it could be remnant, it could be it could be any number of projects, but the fact that you want to serve this project in a way that is cool and different. That's the fun in it all.
So, what's your process like?
For episodic
Yeah.
TV. Let's go with that.
It will be different for every show, but I think you start off with the major themes. That comes from the grandfather thought of Hans. You know, you create your suites and your themes for your characters and your places, and then you break down from there. And I think that creates a format that I've learned how to use that I think is really beneficial. There's a balance there, but you know, you create your themes, you try to find sounds and motifs and techniques that serve the universe, obviously, of the show. Well, I talked a little bit about Beacon, how I wanted to achieve that duality, and of course that gets expanded upon with each character and then the things I can do within that. But creating the overall compelling universe is really important, and then being consistent with that sound is also important. And you know, there's things that I always can grow on myself, that I always listen back and be like, you can do this differently, you do this differently, blah blah blah. But you know, you want to try to feel like you are sticking with a certain sound or themes or recall.
Do you find yourself having to pull yourself back?
Yeah, you know, it's very easy to get stuck in, especially when you're working on a project for so long, you know, it's easy to get lost in what you're doing. Yeah, absolutely. Fidelities, stuff, you know. I mean, hitting mute is a huge skill I continue to work on myself, and I think it's the most valuable skill any composer can use is the mute button. Seriously. It's something I'm working on too.
So you said you're a sci-fi fan. Are you a Trekkie as well?
No, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not a huge Trekkie.
Then what sci-fi fan are you? What kind are you? Because I don't know the others. Picard is my captain, is all I'm saying about that.
Yeah. I never used to read much as a teenager, but later I love reading, and like I use that now. So I love going through sci-fi books. So like we did Ramin did Three Body, excuse me. And, you know, I read that book or that trilogy a couple years before we even worked on it, you know, and so that was really fun to see Ramin get that project because it was something that I've read and loved previously. You know, Isaac Asimov is my favorite author. I think he's an amazing writer.
Do you like the Foundation series?
You know, I guiltily say I have to stay away from it because it is my favorite book series, and I have trouble sometimes with watching media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just sort of based on it, but not entirely it.
I'm a big anime fan too. Like I love certain animes, so you know that's something I would love to do one day. Is do you know, it's not really sci-fi, but I think there are a lot of storytelling or plot. Yeah, exactly.
Which are your favorite or your original anime favorites?
Oh, now we're gonna get into my embarrassing past.
Not embarrassing.
I love Yu Yu Hakusho. Growing up, that was my favorite anime. Period. And then recently,
write this down. I just got into it.
Recently, it's pretty amazing what is now being created. There's a whole wave of new animes that just blow my mind in terms of the production value, and the music too is really becoming sophisticated in those shows. And whoever's involved in doing it is kudos to them. I would love to be involved one day in something creative and interesting, you know.
So how do you make that happen?
Yeah, right? I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah, go to some conventions, meet some people.
Right, shake hands. Yeah. It's a whole nother world.
When you're reading, do you come up with like scores in your head or theme music to whatever's going on?
No, I have a hard time even watching media with sound sometimes. It's really dependent on the mood. Not that I don't love it, it's just it can be a lot to turn the brain off, and sometimes I'll watch things with closed captions and just chill out. And because you know, when you're listening to another piece of score on television, it's hard to get the brain and just sort of enjoy it, right? Like I really enjoy scores for shows, and I think people do amazing jobs. If you're working, the fun thing is that like sometimes if you're working really hard, you know, it's like if you obsess with something for a while, then when you're going into dream state, you'll start to like replay that or something. So like if I'm working really long hours on music, or I'm in a groove, like, and sometimes if before I go to bed or something, I'll hear music in like a very vivid way that is always really fun at that. So that's like a little treat, of like, oh, you're working really hard, but then you get this like really nice musical experience at the end of the night.
In your dreams.
Like a little, like right before for about a minute or two.
It's like a gift and a curse.
Exactly.
And then I guess I'm really interested in, maybe it's kind of my last question. On your website, it shows that you worked on Game of Thrones live concert experience.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think one year Ramin and his wife, Jennifer, had a crazy idea to just go on tour. I mean, I think this was when Ramin was going to John Williams at the Bowl and, Hans going around the world. I think there was an opportunity, and especially I think Game of Thrones was so popular at the time that there was a want for that. So Ramin just said, let's do it. And that was so fun to just learn a different skill from what I was doing, right? And just to go, how do you build a live show with the orchestra from the ground up? Our responsibilities were basically building out the show with Ramin. And that can be from, he would be working on orchestrations and I would be building the rigs that all the players would be playing on and working on the Pro Tool sessions or whatever it is. And then him and Jennifer did the brunt of all the organizations, and I can't even imagine what went on there with the companies. But, for me, at least, it was fun to be working on figuring it out. How do you just take this music and put it in a live setting? And luckily I had a lot of resources from the Hans team because that's where we work, and they just went on tour, so I had help from their team to help me show me the way of like, oh, you kind of need this and this and this. And then going on tour was really fun too, just like being a part of it. I would only go for about 2-3 weeks at a time, and usually the beginnings of the tours, and then I would have to come back to the studio to work on whatever music needed to be written to at the time. So it would be like half and half, which was honestly the benefit.
Good balance.
Touring is not easy. I could see that.
Well, my wife and I took the kids to see it, and it was a success. I'll tell you, your work.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. When it came to Houston, we saw it. We actually took the kids, and the kids don't watch Game of Thrones, but they do like live events. And we took them, and the segment where you guys synced up with the live playing of Battle of the Bastards, like on the big video screen with the music.
Right.
It's really cool, unexpected ad.
I remember that piece. I mean, I've thousands of times have listened to that thing, but that was a really fun. I'm glad you had fun on it. That's what matters, right? Is that as long as you and, the family had a good time, that's all I care about.
Well, there are vocalists. There's a didgeridoo guy, I think. It was really...
Yeah, Pedro is amazing. Cool. And I mean, all the performers were great too. I mean, you gotta give credit to Ramin's music though, first and foremost. Like, I think that some of those pieces still just...
I mean,
no matter how many
theme
times
again for the new show. That says a lot.
Like, he can never escape it.
Oh my gosh, that's great. Yeah, I love your perspective because it is so tough. It is hard. It is. You're like, no, I'm bleeding. We're bleeding on this side. I'm glad it's beautiful, but there's blood, sweat, and tears into the work. So that's
I mean, it's enjoyable through and through, though. It's still music at the end of the day, right? That's the thing that you got to have perspective on, is that our lives are very easy, and thankful for every day for, being able to do this as a living. It's I know how rare that is.
Do we have anything to look forward to you on? More seasons of Beacon or film or TV or anything?
Ooh, the soundtrack for Beacon is going to come out. We have the green light for that. So I'm working away on that. And I'm really excited about that. I think it can really highlight some of the things I've done in the show. I'm really proud of the themes and the characters and the sonic diversity that's in the show. So I'm really excited about that. Oh, I wish I had more news for you, possibly. I wish I was doing, there's some projects out there that were announced. I'm like, oh, that would be really cool to do one day, right? But I think we're all feeling the effects of the strike too. There's not much work coming in, at least at the moment. I think it's the post-strike.
Do you take part in hiring like any of the musical talent that performs, whether it's like on Beacon or like with the I don't think you did on Game of Thrones Live, or do you have any part in hiring the talent?
No, we use a contractor for that. For Beacon in particular, though, I had a amazing musician, Kiara. She came in and do some overlays for me on some of the tracks, or I had a friend, Mark, do some Euro rack orchestra processing that he would take like free use old orchestra tracks, from over 100 years ago, whatever it is, and run them through his Euro rack processing. So like some of those outer space moments of the artifacts sucking in the minds or like of the people of like the beacon keepers, it's like processed orchestra, things like that. But big orchestra wise, we use a contractor, and that can dependent on what the project is, if it's union, non-union, if they have a budget for orchestra, if they don't, it does.
Do you still play?
I have I've been really having fun with friends doing synth pop, rock, whatever you want to call it, on the side. It's just a hobby. Saxophone, unfortunately, I haven't found a good place to I suck right now too. I'm so bad now.
Your face sucks. You don't suck. Your amateur sucks.
Yes. But I used it on Beacon. I used it for the artifact is a processed saxophone. So I would take extended techniques and run them through like a pedal board, and like some of those calls that the Beacon has is just manipulated saxophone. Same with my flute. Like my flute playing is horrible. I sound like Jethro Tull. So it's like it actually benefits me in that way because it's so bad that it makes it more haunting. So a lot of the Aster flute stuff is like just me struggling, and things like that.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. It's you struggling. Oh my gosh. So where can we find some of your stuff on the side then?
Oh, it's called Naked Beach. It's just my couple friends and I. We just kind of I think we have a couple tracks that we're doing now, but like we have a whole bunch just in the burner. I think it doesn't matter how many people listen to it or not. It's just fun, It's just a good time. So I think we're on Spotify.
Nice. Well, I'll check it out. I'll listen to it.
It's just
we
good
woodwind
stuff.
folk have to support each other. Even if it's just in spirit.
Yeah.
Since your amateur sucks. So does mine.
I know. Well, warning, there's no saxophone in that, so. Not yet, at least.
Okay. I'll feel it. But I like that. Not yet. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. There's always room for saxophone.
With that, I guess that pretty much does it for this interview. Will, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I hope I didn't ramble on too much.
I hope you had fun.
I had tons of fun with you both. Thank you so much. This has been really fun to talk about Beacon. I'm really proud of the show and the team, and I hope everybody's enjoying it.
We do. That's why we have the podcast.
Yeah. It's fun to watch. And I mean, as I said, I feel like, music is the soul. So the way you were describing the harmony episode is exactly like how I received it and probably how I describe it. So I think that's amazing. Yeah. So great job. You're doing an amazing job at expressing yourself.
Cool. I just want to make it interesting. And sometimes you fail, sometimes you win. And at least I had the support of the team, to give me the go-ahead to be as creative as I could. So that was honestly the most rare, fortuitous experience I've ever had.
If people wanted to keep up with you and your future happenings, do you have like social media or do you do something like that?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. I think my handle is Will Music. You can tell how much I... oops. I'll try to be better in the future of that stuff. Obviously my website kind of has stuff on it, but I'll start posting more on Instagram and get into that. But it's a changing world. I don't really know the right way to connect with people. I think podcasts honestly are the way to go. Yeah. I don't know how much, people really care about seeing a post on Instagram. Certainly I know the interest is waning. Don't listen to me, Meta, right now. But
you
can cut that out if it hurts your numbers, But engagement it's a whole new world. So I really think that more grassroots engagement is the way to go in the future. So invite me on another time. I'll happily be chatting with you. And if you ever want me back, I will try to give you an update.
Oh, that sounds great.
And we'll be listening for Naked Beach too.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot, Will.
I appreciate you both. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening. This has been an original Pod Clubhouse production. Pod Clubhouse is a podcast network dedicated to encouraging collaboration among podcasters and friends to bring a fresh voice and diverse perspective on a wide array of content. Please visit and leave a comment for us at podclubhouse.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Pod Clubhouse. Our DMs are always open, and we'd love to hear from you. Pod Clubhouse.